This is Tariq Melrose. Today's update felt less like news and more like someone reciting their alibi during a bad crime drama. Nervous, rehearsed, and clearly not meant for people who remember last week. But we do. And we take notes. Subscribe now, because history doesn't rewrite itself unless we let them. And I have no intention of letting that happen.
Trump's DHS wants to gut FEMA, dodge disaster aid, and twist due process into a political weapon. America can't afford this chaos. Stay tuned, because in this video, we're exposing how the GOP's reckless agenda endangers disaster response and undermines the Constitution.
Well, I need a little help from a chair that respects the members of the committee. I'm sorry, Madam Chair. This is...
You pretty much secured the southern border, haven't you?
Yes, sir. The CBP,
and that upsets some of my colleagues, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. They say you've done it the wrong way, haven't they? Mm-hmm. Could you answer that?
Yes, sir. They do say that.
Do you think they're upset because you supposedly did it the wrong way, or you think they're upset that you did it at all?
I think they're upset that by President Trump enforcing the law, it happened so quickly and successfully.
Yeah. Now, when President Biden came into office, the first thing he did was get rid of all of the things we were doing to stop people from coming into our country illegally, didn't he?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I mean, it was like The Price is Right. Come on down. Except he said, come on in. And most of my Democratic colleagues went along with that, didn't they?
Mm-hmm. Yes, they did.
In fact, they cheered him on, didn't they? Mm-hmm. Is that a yes?
Yes, sir.
How many people do you think President Biden let into our country illegally? Just give me a ballpark figure.
Sir, we don't know for certain, but we believe it could be upwards to 20 million people that are illegally in this country.
So that's like adding 10 Nebraskas to our country, isn't it?
That's correct.
Why do you think President Biden and my Democratic colleagues did that? Do you think they believe in open borders?
I think they believed in open borders and letting people come into this country that would affect our society and criminals. Those other countries emptying out the worst of the worst, their mental institutions, their prisons came in here and jeopardized, and known terrorists.
Well, only one or two circumstances are possible, it seems to me. Either President Biden and the Democrats who supported him believe in open borders, or the people that President Biden put in charge of securing the border, you wouldn't trust to run a snowball stand. Right?
That is correct.
So nobody is that incompetent. So it has to be, they just believe in open borders, do they not?
Yes, because I know the people who were securing the border and they weren't allowed to do their job.
Do you think they believe that vetting people at the border is racist?
Yes, I do. I think by the way they allowed people in and granted them immediate parole status.
Do you think that President Biden and some of my Democratic colleagues, I don't want to paint with too broad a brush, Madam Secretary, thought of these foreign nationals in our country illegally as potential new voters?
I do, sir.
Okay. If you're an ordinary American and you oppose illegal immigration, but you support legal immigration, does that make you a racist?
No, sir. No, sir, not at all. It just means that you believe there should be a rule of law, and that's what America was built on.
And that's what you've been enforcing, right?
Exactly. We have been following the Constitution and the rule of law in this country.
And I want to be sure I understand, because there's been a lot of confusing testimony here. You've secured the border, have you not?
This administration has, yes, sir.
And some of my colleagues are upset with you.
Yes, sir.
And they say you did it wrong.
Yes, sir.
And do you agree with me that what they're really upset about is that you did it at all?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I want to ask you a last question about our federal judiciary. I've said repeatedly that all of us has a moral and a civic obligation to follow federal orders, and I stand by that. But there have been a lot of national injunctions, universal injunctions issued to try to stop you from doing your job. Where were these judges when people were breaking the law and coming into our country illegally? Were any of them speaking up and issuing national injunctions against the Democrats?
I don't believe I can be specific about every single judge, but these judges that now are trying to stop us from enforcing our laws, I don't believe or recall them.
Can you
being
think,
vocal then.
Madam Secretary, of one single solitary federal judge who, when President Biden and my Democratic colleagues, not all of them, but many of them,
Gentleman's time has expired.
Secretary or Senator Murray went on over about 2 minutes, so I'm going to take a minute.
Senator Van
Well, if
Hollen
you
just got
can-
shut down.
Yes,
right
if you
on the
can,
zeros.
if you can finish your question.
Can you recall one single solitary federal judge when President Biden and my Democratic colleagues were letting 20 million people come into the country illegally?
I don't recall.
Can you think of
Thank
one
you.
single solitary judge
you.
that
This
is
issued
more
a
than-
national
Thank you.
This is
injunction
more
to
than one
stop
question.
them?
No, I can't recall
I
one.
can't either. If there weren't
you,
for
Senator
double
Kennedy.
standards
Madam
around
Chair,
here,
Okay.
Madam
there
And
wouldn't
so
be any
Senator Peters-
standards at all, Madam
have any
Secretary.
rules
Thank you.
Rules Committee,
Thank
Madam
you,
Chair?
Senator Kennedy.
I'd-
Senator Peters.
Madam, let me just say, let's apply the rules fairly. Senator Van Hollen was asking tough questions, but was shut down pretty immediately when his time was expired. Can we at least have a commitment, Madam Chair, that senators on this committee will be allowed to submit questions for the record,
Absolutely.
and that you will
Yes.
Absolutely.
ask the secretary to answer those questions?
What we just heard in that hearing is yet another brutal reminder of how deeply the Trump Republican agenda is willing to undermine core government functions, and how shamelessly they'll spin it while doing so. The ranking member started by hitting the nail on the head. The Department of Homeland Security, an institution created with bipartisan support after 9/11 to protect Americans, has now become a top target of Donald Trump's political revenge tour. And the secretary sitting in that chair, a chief accomplice in dismantling it from within. Let's start with FEMA, because this is where the stakes go from abstract politics to real-life catastrophe. FEMA is the backbone of our nation's disaster response. When hurricanes flatten communities, when wildfires rip through towns, when floods swallow neighborhoods, FEMA is there. It coordinates relief, mobilizes resources, and makes sure that no matter what zip code you live in, your government has your back. That's not just policy, that's a promise to the American people. And yet, under Trump's vision, proudly defended by this secretary, FEMA would be gutted, torn down, replaced with some vague block grant system where the federal government's role shrinks to little more than a check-writing machine, leaving states and local governments to figure it out themselves. That sounds fine in a Fox News soundbite about empowering states, but in the real world, it means handing disaster response over to the luck of the draw. If your state's emergency infrastructure is underfunded or politically neglected, too bad. You're on your own. And when pressed on whether there's even a written plan for this massive overhaul, nope. Just vague references to a FEMA review council and reform bills floating in Congress. No finalized blueprint, no public accountability. Just trust us. We'll let you know once we've decided how much less help you're going to get when your home is underwater or your power grid fails. That's not reform. That's dereliction of duty. Then came the second half of the exchange. And this is where the hypocrisy really hits. The ranking member pivoted to due process. Now, due process isn't some optional tool Congress tosses to DHS to use at its convenience. It's a constitutional guarantee enshrined in the Fifth Amendment applying to every person, not just citizens, on U.S. soil. It's the very thing that keeps our justice system from becoming an instrument of raw political power. Yet here was the secretary talking about due process as though it's just another procedural gadget Congress gave them to deploy when they feel like it. Expedited removal, a fast-track deportation process with minimal judicial oversight, was held up as an example of due process. Let's be clear, expedited removal is not what most Americans think of when they hear due process. It's the bare minimum legal fig leaf, and it's been abused repeatedly under Trump to short-circuit people's rights. When asked point blank if every person detained by ICE or DHS has been given the full constitutional protections they're entitled to, the secretary wouldn't just give a clean yes or no. Instead, we got the same evasive dance we've heard over and over. We have utilized the tools you have given us. Translation, we've stretched every loophole and shortcut we can find, and we're calling that compliance. This is the dangerous through line in Trump Republican governance. Whether it's disaster response or constitutional rights, they treat core government obligations as optional, something to be hollowed out, privatized, or reinterpreted until it serves their political goals. FEMA isn't broken, but they want to reform it into irrelevance so they can slash federal responsibility. Due process isn't an inconvenience, but they want to redefine it until it means whatever helps them deport faster and detain longer. And notice the pattern. Both issues, FEMA and due process, are about the same underlying philosophy. Shrink the federal government's duty to protect people in times of crisis and expand its power to punish and control. That's the authoritarian formula. Less help when you need it, more muscle when they want to make an example out of you. What's worse is the lack of transparency. No written FEMA plan, no clear commitment to real due process, no honest acknowledgement of the constitutional limits on executive power. Just a mix of political talking points and bureaucratic doublespeak designed to dodge accountability. The ranking member's line of questioning ripped away that thin layer of spin and exposed what's really going on. Trump's DHS isn't about keeping America safe. It's about reshaping the role of government to fit a hard-right authoritarian agenda, dismantle federal safety nets, undermine the separation of powers, and weaponize federal agencies against the vulnerable. That's why these hearings matter, because behind every one of these exchanges is a real-world consequence. A town left stranded after a natural disaster, a family torn apart without a fair hearing, a constitutional safeguard chipped away until it's meaningless. And if we let this philosophy take root unchecked, those consequences become the new normal. This isn't just about FEMA or immigration. It's about the broader question of what kind of country we want to live in. Do we want a federal government that shows up in times of crisis, that upholds the rule of law for everyone, and that sees protecting rights as a sacred duty? Or do we want a government that shrugs when disaster strikes and steamrolls due process because it's politically convenient? Donald Trump and his enablers have answered that question with their actions. They want the latter. They want a government that serves the powerful and abandons the rest. They want FEMA turned into a shell. They want constitutional protections reduced to tools they can pick and choose from. And they're willing to leave millions of Americans vulnerable to floods, fires, deportations, or worse, to make that vision a reality. The only way to stop it is to call it out, hold it accountable, and vote it out. Because every day this agenda advances, the fabric of our democracy frays just a little more. And by the time the next disaster hits, whether it's a Category 5 hurricane or another constitutional crisis, it might be too late to fix the damage. This has been Tariq Melrose Vlogs, where we cut through the political spin, expose the hypocrisy, and fight for a government that actually works for the people. If you believe in protecting disaster relief, defending due process, and stopping authoritarian overreach before it's too late, hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe. Because the fight for a fair, functional democracy doesn't end when the cameras turn off. It starts with all of us refusing to let this become the new normal.